So today I'd like to talk a little bit advanced chip and trick, not like super basic. Be aware of the vessel tapering. So let's talk this case. You see the super diffuse LED lesion, and there is a lot of branch. And you have almost no idea what the vessel size because of the super diffuse disease. But there is a very clear rule. So let's show the IVUS in each segment. And I measure the vessel diameter. So let's start from the very proximal. This is a very proximal LED, and I measure the medial to medial is 4.9. After this big diag, I measure here is 4.1. After the second big diag, I measure here 3.4. After the third big diag, I measure 3.0. And without big branch, the vessel diameter is similar. So now you can recognize even geographically looks quite diffuse disease, but really how vessel tapering was determined by the side branch location. So whenever you see the big branch, you should recognize how vessel diameter will be changed very consistent way. And this is a very old paper describing how it looks like the vessel tapering. And vessel tapering is the most in the LED. And typically, if you go to 10 millimeter, it's 0.33. But circumflex right coronary is about half. That's really where we see. So if you implant stent, and let's say the proximal LED, you put the 4, and if you put 30 millimeter stent in the 30 millimeter distal segment should be 3. So those are the very basic, and many times we are not sure by angio. But one thing we should recognize is this is a different case. You can see the very diffuse disease, and I see the big diag and second diag. And then I see similar concept which I show in the first case. But one surprise of this case was there is a big calcium, but afterwards there is a muscle bridge. And always inside of the bridge is normal, and you see the very dark, that's the bridge. And we analyze the bridge in the consecutive cases. The prevalence of the bridge is 25% of the LED. Therefore, this is not infrequent. So whenever you see the diffuse LED lesion, you should keep in mind you may have the bridge at the end of the lesion. So that you should not cover because that's most likely causing the restenosis. The second, if you want to predict how good stent expansion in the calcified region, I really recommend you should imagine how it looks like the total volume of the calcium in that region. And we developed the calcium score. So the first we look into the angio because angiographic appearance help us. If angiographic calcium is yes, we measure the calcium angle at the site of the maximum. If that is more than 270, we measure calcium score. So the components of the calcium score is if the angle is more than 270 is longer than 5 millimeter, indicating the very diffuse long calcified region, 0.1. And if you see the circumferential calcium, that's very different compared to, let's say, 330 degree calcium. The reason is if you have the non-calcium circumference, that's making the good dissection. That's very different compared to the circumferential calcium. If so, 0.1. And the calcified nodule is really the indication of the big chunk of the calcium behind. And you have to remember if that is there, that's going to be 0.1. And finally, the vessel diameter is very important. Even the calcified region, go there and you can measure the vessel diameter, that's help us. And if you start from the small vessel, you have less chance to expand better. Therefore, altogether, that's indicating the good stent expansion. So we developed that score in the test cohort and we validate in the separate validation cohort. And if you see the big calcium score, you have the poor expansion. But if you do the atherectomy, even the high score is a good stent expansion. Additionally, we picking up the no angiographic calcium cohort, but all of them having the IVUS calcium is more than 270. None of them having the score 4, and even the high score, they are good expansion. Why? Because that's indicating the thin calcium. That is the reason why we couldn't see by angio. So it's important to imagine how big the calcium is. Really, you have to look into the how circumference and how long. And angiographic appearance is also important. And there is a very clear interaction between the calcium score and the atherectomy usage. And if the score is more than 2, most likely we can get the better stent expansion if you do the something else. What is important for the prediction, for the confirmation, is really look for the calcium fracture. And this is how looks at the calcium fracture by IVUS. And how you can identify, you look for the behind. Meaning, if there is a calcium, you couldn't see the behind. But if there is a calcium fracture, that's indicating already the calcium was separate. And then you should see the behind. That's that's a fracture. And if you have the fracture, because of the fracture site making the good strength of the vessel, and then making the good stent expansion. Confirmation of the fracture before stent in the severe calcium region is very important. You are secure of the good stent expansion. And I just want to show one case, what's happening. And this is a very severe LAD, and you can see the vessel diameter of the by IVUS is 4.5. And the operator performed the pre-dilatation using the relatively small balloon compared to the vessel size. And after the balloon, what you see is distal portion looks like new stenosis. And what's happening? This is really so-called intramural hematoma. And once lesion segment was balloon, at the edge, medial dissection, because of those segment was relatively normal, and they extend very easily distally and making the closed space without re-entry site, and blood going to be here and making the hematoma and pushing to the lumen. That's really the mechanism of the hematoma. And once you have this type of the hematoma, similar to the SCAT, you should consider stent by covering the entire segment. Otherwise, this hematoma is pushing distally. So this case is very instructive by IVUS picture. You see the entry side and then medial dissection extended longitudinally. This is closed space without the entry side. And this is very typical IVUS hematoma. You see the hyperintensity helmet shape that's pushing to the lumen. That's really how it looks like the hematoma. The importance, you have to look for what is the entry side and then how you're going to cover. This case after the stent at the site of the hematoma is really well, no more hematoma. Out-osteum, that's very important. This case, you see the out-osteal lesion, and operator saw, by IVUS, we see the very clear focal calcified stenosis. And operator put the stent angiographically, and you see it looks okay. But when we see the IVUS, we are surprised. Actually, lesion was completely missed, and there is no stent at the ostium of the lesion. And the operator put one more stent and osteoflash, and this is how it looks like. And this is very important if the lesion located at the ostium, even though angiographically you thought it's covered, but sometimes it's not. And really important to confirm you cover the entire lesion after disengaging the guiding catheter. Additionally, this is also happen, so-called stent deformation. This is a case which having the lesion in the circumflex ostium to the left domain, and because this is protected LAD, and we put the stent from the circumflex to the left domain. There is only one stent, but at the ostium of the left domain, you see the double layer of the stent, even only one stent. This is really stent deformation, and that you have to recognize. This is not, again, rare phenomena. In the Excel trial, we see 6.5% of the stent deformation, which correlate with the outcome. Because if you don't recognize, because inside of the stent area is smaller than original because it's deformed, and also sometimes you may miss the lesion because stent is shorter compared to the original length. So recognition and additional treatment is quite important. How you identify the side branch variation? This is a case, and we are in the LAD, and we look for the circumflex ostium. And I thought this is okay, looks like clean. However, it is not. And when we look into the circumflex directly, we see the chunk of the disease. And what is important to evaluate the side branch from the main branch, you have to remember, this is very poor specificity, meaning if you don't see any lesion, that does not mean no lesion. So in such, you have to check the circumflex directly. But the other way, if you see something, that's most likely true, that's disease. And finally, I just want to say something in terms of the artifact. And this is very typical artifact, so-called NARD. So it's very familiar and you understand this is not correct measurement. That's fine. But how about this case? This is also the protected left main, and after the stenting into the left main, we measure this. And I saw this is a little bit distorted picture, not clear NARD, but very distorted picture. And then we asked the operator, please disengage in the guide, and then making more coaxial, taking the IVUS. And then we did this picture. And compared to this picture, you understand how outside is more smooth picture. And actually the stent area is very different. And this is real number. So if you have distorted picture, even not very clear node, you have to recognize that may not be correct measurement. So disengaging the guide and then checking the ostium is very important. So that's all what I would like to show for the advanced IVUS chip and trick. Thank you so much.